Good morning. My name is Marciai Stromgren, and you've tuned in to Just the Facts. I have a guest in the studio today, Donna Bergstrom, who is running for Senate District 7, which covers most of the Duluth area. Thank you for coming in today, Donna. So nice to have you
Yes.
again.
Thank you, Marcy. It's great to see you, and it's great to be here.
So you are running for the Senate seat, and I would like you to just give a little background of yourself, and then what are the big issues that you feel are extremely important?
Sure. Right. Well, I grew up in this area. I grew up in Carleton, Minnesota, graduated from Carleton High School. And my grandfather was born here, my paternal grandfather, Swedish immigrant, first generation. And when he graduated from Old Central High School, he started working for the railroad. So he helped lay the tracks here in Duluth and up and around Minnesota. But when I graduated from high school, I went down to the University of Minnesota and studied political science at the University of Twin Cities. And then after that, I took a little time to backpack around Europe. And I like to tell people it's really there, even though I had a great appreciation for America and all that we had to offer. I really fell in love with America there. And I came back from that experience and decided I wanted to give back all that I could to the country that was so good to me. So I joined the Marine Corps. And what I thought was going to be about 7.5 years really turned out to be 20 years. And I ended up retiring in 2010 as a lieutenant colonel. And I spent 20 years as a military intelligence officer. So I was happy that my husband, who grew up in Arizona, I was able to convince to move back here to Duluth, where my roots are, and where I said, you know, we need to raise our son up in that good fresh air in northeast Minnesota. So here we are. We've been here since 2010.
And you still have, your mother is still living, as I understand, and you're in contact with her as much as you can be, although she's in a facility that you were not allowed to go in and visit her during this, most of the COVID thing. Is that lightened up at all? Or are you able to be with her more, or?
Yes, thank you for asking about that. Yeah, my mother's doing well despite it all. She is in an assisted living facility, and they had really serious lockdown, and we weren't able to visit. Anybody wasn't able to visit throughout the state, and it has eased up some now. They've changed some of the restrictions, and they're going to start moving forward with some more visits. So that's good, because really it's so lonely, as you know, and one of the things that we were really concerned about was just how that's going to affect our elders, not being able to have family visit them, friends visit them, church services, which were oftentimes offered there, communion, those types of things, they just were all ended. But now they're starting to open that up a little bit more, and she's doing well. And then, of course, Dad's doing well, too. He still lives independent at home. And I like to say that, you know, my dad, I'm a proud product of the paper industry, because my dad worked for the Potlatch Corporation for many years, was able to raise 7 kids on his salary, good family supporting jobs that, you know, we had out of that Potlatch Corporation, now Sappy.
Yeah, paper industry is being affected greatly by much of the shutdown in Minnesota, in the lumbering industry, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Well, okay, maybe that might be one of your issues to talk about too. But you did say that you'd like to talk a bit about the redistricting, which will be coming up after the election. There will be that to deal with.
Right, yeah, I just want to make sure people are aware that after the 2020 census, and after our elections in November, the state legislatures are the ones who draw the districting lines. And so we'll be redistricting based on our population counts. So it's really going to be important who we send to our House and to our Senate. And knowing that we send people down there with good integrity and people that are really looking to make sure that everybody's represented in a thoughtful manner. So we don't hear a lot about redistricting. That's not a really sexy issue, so to speak, like some of the others. But it is, I think, very important, and it'll be something that'll have impact for, you know, a decade until another redistricting, or even longer.
Well, you know, another candidate that I've interviewed really recently, he's running in one of the western districts, said not much is being said by the opposition about jobs. And we know what has happened to the iron mining industry, and that trickles down here into Duluth, and now we just lost so how do you say that? Verso.
Yeah, Verso.
And 600 jobs plus all of the other jobs that are part of that industry to keep it up and running.
Right.
What is your thoughts on unemployment problems in Minnesota?
Very significant, yeah, and that is a top issue, absolutely. And the reason that it is because we just have embraced this business unfriendly environment. There's no reason that we shouldn't be a booming town here in Duluth. We have what was, I think, the largest port in the nation for activity has dropped down to about the 19th.
Really?
So yeah, so
Oh
our
my.
port is something that is significant. We have rail that goes in and out of here. We have good transport, surface transport, and of course the mine. You know, what's happening up in our mining community, those are good family supporting jobs, and that's something that I absolutely would work for. And I know that a lot of the Iron Range mayors came out and said that they were really frustrated with the Democratic Farmer Labor Party because they were turning their back on what had really been the way that the range was brought to its greatness was because of all the mining that happened, our resources that are up there, and the responsible manner in which we've always done it. This is our home. I mean, we're not going to do anything that's going to be hurtful to our water, to our environment. So I'm with them in saying we can have responsible mining, and we need to open those jobs back up. I like to point out pipeline, the Line 3 effort. That is another job that will, another avenue to promote some jobs, lots of them. It'll put money in the Minnesota coffers in addition. I mean, so there's just, several win-win-wins on that, and it's replacing old infrastructure. Right now in Minnesota, when they go back in January, the legislature, I think, there's been estimates between $4 and $7 billion of a deficit, where once we had, the surplus, now we're going to be really operating in a deficit. So we have to look at ways that we're going to be able to grow our economy, even in this crisis, which, we're seeing now, this pandemic. It's starting to, certainly the curve has been flattened, but we need to start working on our economy again and getting people back into those good paying jobs.
Well, it's kind of interesting listening to, it was interesting that the Two Harbors mayor, introduced Larry Cuffey. And you and I heard him at the Pence rally.
Yes.
And I stood there for a moment and I go, Larry Cuffey, I was going over in my mind, Larry Cuffey, I worked on his campaign for sheriff against Littman years ago, and here he's a mayor. I'm not sure which city he's a mayor in, but for him to represent that many mayors on the range was astounding. Their voices certainly will be adding to what we've been saying all along is we have some of the most stringent rules and regulations in environmentalism in the United States.
Yes.
And so that is not just the federal government supporting that, but that is the state of Minnesota's regulations and guidelines.
Right.
So if we can do mining under those terms, then think of all the people. Think of all the people that would benefit from the mining jobs and then the rippling water that goes out from that. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't just stop here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's going everywhere. And it's even going across the bridge into Wisconsin. So, I mean, we need to have representatives who are going to support that type of legislation. There's no doubt about that.
Right, and I couldn't agree with you more. And from a military background, I know that our critical minerals are used in our intelligence communications, military. I mean, you just go through all sorts of, aspects that make our military strong and able to defend us. And they use precious minerals. Well, where are we getting them from now? We're getting them from foreign suppliers, and that puts our nation at risk. So I really think we need to look at it from a national security perspective as well.
Oh, sure.
And then look at, your electric cars, your cell phones, all those kind of things. They have precious minerals in them as well. So I think it's just best that we use our resources here because we know how to do it responsibly and put the money back into our economy. And you're right, those ancillary jobs that come along with the mining, from human resources to suppliers to the supply chain, it just really adds an economic boost, and that's what we definitely need here in Duluth.
What's your thoughts on education and where it has taken our children for the last many years? It seems that we need an overhaul. A big overhaul
Yes.
down there. We keep putting money into education. Our taxes keep going up for education. And yet we have some of the most uneducated and Duluth School District is top as far as the graduation gap between people, different races, people of color.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Marcy. That is one of my top issues, and I love talking about education. I actually have my substitute teacher license because I found too that education really is the cornerstone of our nation. And out at East High School, I think that's carved into the stone there. Education is the foundation of our nation, and so I believe in that. And I think back to the time when Minnesota was the first in the nation to create the charter school legislation and to promote that concept. And it was really based on the fact that we believed that competition was good, that you needed to have competition in order to give parents and children resources and tools that they need to get the education that that work best for them. And somehow we've moved away from that, and charter schools are public schools. But there's this notion that the government is the one that best decides how your child should get their education given to them. And I firmly stood against that and continue to, because I think the parent knows best the educational choice that will work for their child. So there have been some discussions recently about an education savings account. Similar to your health savings account, where in this time of COVID, if your school's not open and you want your child to be educated, what are some of the other resources that are available? There's homeschool, there's online public school, there's private schools, etc. And how do we allow kids to tap into that so they're not just trapped waiting for a school district to open up? But I have been completely baffled by this education approach to our children. And I think we have some really smart ways to educate our kids that would have allowed them to go back to school. And I haven't seen that happen here in Duluth, except for in our private schools and our independent schools.
Well, one of the things that kind of came home to me the other day, a young man just lives right up the street, and he needed to take care of the chickens because I was in the cities. And John was on a fishing trip. So he was riding his bike up and down his driveway, and I happened to see him, and I said hello. He came down and talked for a couple minutes, and he's bored, absolutely bored. He's home all by himself all day long. His sister's in daycare, and his older brother is working, and mom and dad are both working. He's bored. His friends that live right down the road, their house is being remodeled, and so they're not living there now. He has nobody in that area because we live in the country.
Right.
What is this doing to our children? And I disagree with public education. I'm home educated.
Yeah.
But not everybody's going to do that. So these kids have lost all the contact. So it's affected our elderly that are shut up in these assisted living homes, people that are shut in apartments. It's affecting our young people. We need to do something and get them going this fall, because not everybody's going to homeschool the kids online, which many people are finally doing.
Right.
I'm happy to see that. But not everybody's going to do that. And so is there anything that that I don't know that's going to happen to the school opening this fall? Have you heard anything?
Well, I mean, each of the districts are a little different. I understand that, Duluth should be opening here in the next couple of weeks. They have, but quite frankly, my son is not in the public schools. We had intended for that to happen, and on that Monday when they were making their decision of what they were going to do, they decided not to open back up, and my son wanted to go back to school. He wants to learn. He wants to be in a educational setting because that works best for him. Having his peers around him, having that, system that's in place that works best for him. So we moved him into an independent school. And that's where he is right now. And he's so happy to be there, which, is my words. I think he'd use different words. But, all those things that go with it, the routine, the expectability that you have from the teachers, what they expect of the students, and then just being able to be with his peers, and then also be with the sports team. He was able to get on the soccer team still. So you're right, Marcy. There are so many things that are peripheral, that are just go along with education that these kids are missing out on now. And I think it's going to be detrimental to them. So I think they need to figure something out and how to get those kids back into school.
Well, it'd be nice to have your voice down there because you're level-headed, and I think you can get your point across very well. And people need to realize when they're out there thinking about who they're voting for. I was blown away in my township as an election judge. This guy brought his little sheet in from the union, so he wanted to make sure that who he was voting for agreed with the union. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid, folks, you've done that too long. I've been a candidate. I know the process, and that's not your voice when you vote, it's their voice. So you have to think about that now when you go to the polls on November 3rd. You've got to realize these people are representing you, and not the union is not going to represent you. It gives you a job, but it's not representing you, so think for yourself and vote for yourself. What are some other issues that you feel are crucial?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Marcy, because I think that is the big issue that I want to talk about, is that, we've been door knocking for months now, and, there's just been really good support from that. But every once in a while, I come across a Democrat that says, I'm dyed in the wool, thank you for stopping, just move along now. And what I would really challenge those dyed-in-the-wool Democrats to do is to go back a couple of cycles and look at what the DFL platform used to be when you were, strong on DFL, and then look at what the platform is now, because it has changed significantly. And maybe you don't know that, that are the dyed-in-the-wools, okay? So go back and look, and you talk about the union people. Go back and look and see what was it like when you joined the DFL, and what is it like today? Because it is night and day. And I study these things, and I look at them because I want to make sure I'm aligned with the right party too. And my grandfather was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, of course, because he was a union guy on the railroad, but he would not be a Democrat today. I can say that confidently, because he does not believe in the things that are of the Democratic platform now. And it is such things as infanticide, euthanasia, lawlessness, et cetera, et cetera. So really do your homework, find out what were the values when you first joined, and what are the values now. And maybe you want to just look at the candidates and say, okay, maybe I'm not going to follow my union card because I want to follow the candidates that are going to be supportive of our good paying jobs. And I'm pro-union, pro-trades, pro-labor, pro-jobs. And I think we can, educate people as to what has happened within the party. So that's a great point. That is an issue that I speak to often. That when we come across them, and this is America, of course. I spent 20 years defending people being able to make their own choices, but I just want to make sure you're educated so that you're not surprised that if you are voting for a Democrat and they are voting against the police department, they're voting against jobs, they're voting for sanctuary cities, you are not surprised, because honestly that is where the Democratic Party is heading right now, and it's very metro-centric. So whatever is the focus of the metro is how the DFL candidates throughout Minnesota are supposed to act. So there's really less representation here in Duluth that aligns with our values from the other side, because we're focused here on our Iron Range, on our ports, on our good logging community, and those things that have made our community great, and the resources that we have here. So thank you for bringing that up. That is something I do, speak to. And then lawlessness. That is a really big issue. People say, well, they're so divided right now. There's for police, against police. I said, well, here's what I know. Do you like going to the market and being safe? Yes. Well, so do I. So guess what? We just agreed on something, even though we have different perspectives. So let's figure out, how do we get to the supermarket safely? And do that so everybody can live in a safe manner in their community. I am endorsed by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, so I take law enforcement very seriously. And I maybe have said this before on your show, but if we're going to pass laws, we need to enforce them. Otherwise, why are we passing laws? We wouldn't need a legislature and legislative people to be down there if we're not going to enforce our laws. So law enforcement and of course being out at the doors, we're hearing that from people. They want to see all of Minnesota go back to what's in our Constitution called domestic tranquility. And I certainly believe that's something that we can achieve and not have to go through these riots and protests that we're seeing primarily in the Twin Cities area. But we can have a safe and civil society.
Well, the riots in not just the Twin Cities, but also throughout the nation are destroying the infrastructure in those areas. And it's coming to a neighborhood near you when its lawlessness is allowed by the current triumvirate that's running our state. Legislators, I listened to them the other night. They don't have a say in what's happening. And
Right.
so we have people who are just not willing to protect you and I, but they tell us how to live our lives and what we can and what we can't do. That's
Right.
not what you folks out in this listening audience have been used to all these years. And so we need a voice like yourself to make things right again, if that's a possible term to use.
I like that tagline, make things right again.
Might have to put that up over the top of the YouTube.
Yeah.
But is there anything else? We still have a few minutes, Donna. Is there anything else that you haven't talked about that you'd like to bring to the attention of the audience?
Well, I like to, point out to people that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the brilliance of my elders and the decisions that they made. My mom, of course, is Native American, and I'm an enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation. But of course, our Native communities went through troubling times. Putting it gently, where we once had friendly relations with the government and then had non-friendly. And so I think the Native story is a very compelling story that we need to listen to and hear right now, because that's what we're seeing is that. So we know that we need to have good support throughout our state constitution and our U.S. Constitution, and I've sworn to uphold and defend that U.S. Constitution, many times throughout my commissioning and then my promotions. And so as an elected legislative leader, I would swear to uphold our Minnesota Constitution as well, and I would do just that.
Well, that's an interesting perspective that I'm sure most people have not heard. And it would be nice to hear more from the Native American people. And yes, we're learning a lot on PBS. We're learning a lot about the historical nature of what really happened to the black people, which is horrendous. Some of that is horrendous. But throughout history, the Jews have been persecuted. The black people have been persecuted. Native American people have been persecuted. And lo and behold, so have the whites. I mean, there isn't one color that has not been in slavery. If you go back into ancient history, which I've been doing lately, they've all been subjected to dictator-type people, which is what we're seeing in many of the states, including Minnesota here. We need representative government, which is the way our country was founded upon. Now, were those men perfect? No, because
We all
all
fall
have
short.
sinned
Right.
and come short of the glory of God.
Yeah.
So they were human beings. They made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. We need to all admit our mistakes. But let's stop holding the people today accountable for what happened in the past because we weren't there. Today we need to move forward and we need to apologize and forgive those errors and try and make our country great again because it was. At one time it was. And it still can be, but it takes everybody. And voting is extremely important.
Very important, very, very important. November 3rd, the election's just right around the corner. September 18th, early voting starts. So if you need to early vote, you can do so September 18th. But this is going to be the election, and I know people say this in every election, the most important election of our life. But I really believe this one is it, because we have seen the other side is showing their hand, which is socialism and communism. That goes directly against everything that I believe in. I believe in our free mixed market economy and the brilliance of our founding fathers, as you said. I think our Constitution is one of the most emulated constitutions around the world. And why is that? It's because it's a great constitution. So I think if we get back to our foundational roots and we look at what was the meaning of domestic tranquility, again, we can look at where it is helpful to us and then, fix what it is that people have a grievance with. But I don't think you're going to find a better constitution than ours.
We are the oldest running free nation in the world. There is none that has lasted as long as we have. And so that is something to keep in mind when you think of other countries, the persecution that's going on in other countries and the economic problems that they're having. The starvation is so much greater than anything in the United States. And so, yes, that is what has stabilized what we know as America, and it's time to start looking at that more clearly and have people like yourself running for office and getting elected in November. November 3rd, folks, is a opportunity. Don't stay home and don't say, oh, what's the use? I voted before, I gotten nowhere. Stop taking that attitude. Get out there and be responsible for a gift that was given to you many, many years ago, was the opportunity to select the people that are going to be your voice down in the House of Representatives and the Senate come November 3rd. Thanks so much, Donna.
Thank you.
It was great
Appreciate
to have
it,
you in
Marcy.
here again.
Good to
Wish
see you.
the best.
Thank you so much. Take
Bye.
care.
Good morning. My name is Marciai Stromgren, and you've tuned into Just the Facts. I have a guest in my studio today who is running for the House District 7A in the Duluth area. Tom Sullivan, welcome. Nice
Thank
to
you,
have
Marcy.
you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Tom, I'd like you to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, a little background, your historical background as to why you feel that running for this office is a good fit for you, and then we'll talk about some issues. So you want to start out with an introduction?
Sure. So who is Tom Sullivan? Tom Sullivan is a citizen of Duluth since 1973. I grew up in both the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I also spent some time growing up on the prairie down in Ivanhoe, Minnesota, town that's 22 miles straight west of Marshall, Minnesota. And we moved to Duluth. My wife and I, Kathy, moved to Duluth in 1973. My schooling was in the Twin Cities. I went to a Twin Cities high school, Minneapolis Marshall, which is now gone, torn down, and the University of Minnesota, which as far as I know is still standing. And then in 1973, we moved up here. I worked with Northwestern Bell Telephone Company, and I was with them for a total of almost 5 years. After being 2 years in Duluth, we realized that we were going to be transferred out of Duluth, And my wife and I both fell in love with the area immediately, did not want to leave Duluth, realized that if we stayed with the phone company, we'd have to leave Duluth. So we went off onto endeavors of our own. I worked for an insurance company for about 12 years, Principal Financial, and supplemented that with some income from teaching martial arts. And after teaching martial arts for about, I would say 5 years, strongly went into that more than selling insurance. And that became our mainstay. That was our income. The program that I started, called Karate North, grew to be one of the largest martial arts organizations in the United States. At our peak, we had over 125 schools in 3 different countries. And we ended up traveling a lot. During that time, I expanded my aviation portion of the career as I flew fighters to fight cards and myself to various tournaments and fight cards and across the country. I judged a lot of fight cards after I retired from the ring, and both boxing and martial arts. So at one time I was the kickboxing state representative, and I held that position for the Minnesota State for probably 7 years until they disbanded it. So that was my primary thrust and career up until the time that I opened up a health club in downtown Duluth called Phase 2. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers will recognize me from that, because we had, at one time, we had over 1,200 members at Phase 2, large health club. Went very successful for quite a few years. Competition increased in the business, and we got down to the point where we just weren't making a living at it, so we closed it up. I was also getting to the age where I wanted to start a second career, so I went to work for Cirrus Aircraft. And I was a corporate pilot, flight instructor for Cirrus Aircraft. Worked for them for about 15 years. Flew all over the country. In one summer, I was in all of the 48 lower states doing demo flights, and went from there to sales. My last, I think, 5 to 7 years I was in sales, and I covered Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. So I became very well traveled from airport to airport and saw a lot of the country.
You know, I think you are somebody that I talked to some time ago, and you may not remember this, but it was at a restaurant, and I talked with this fellow who talked about knowing about businesses in a variety of different states, and your statement was Minnesota is one of the toughest places to do business in the surrounding states, and I'm thinking back on that now, but whether you were or were not, you just kind of remind me of that conversation. So you've been a business owner. You have a financial finesse to keep businesses going, which this is a tough state. I own a business, so I know. But is that one of your key issues, perhaps, that you would work on should you be elected?
Absolutely. Minnesota is a tough state to do business in. We hear a lot nationally about California, New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, but we're right behind them. And unfortunately, Minnesota taxation is such that a lot of people who have the money and ability to do so are moving out, and they're moving to states like Florida, where the taxes, state income tax is 0. So we're losing all of that income tax revenue. And the way to stop it is not to overtax those people.
No.
And try to bring them back by saying that they have to come back, because then we will lose them permanently.
We've lost many permanently.
We've lost many permanently, no question about it.
North Dakota, South Dakota,
Yep.
Iowa, all of the surrounding states are getting very good professional people with background in business that they establish the businesses there, and that helps their state, and we lose.
Absolutely.
Big time.
And there's no
Yeah.
question about it. And I know several friends of mine that are doing just exactly that. They spend 6 months and a day outside of the state of Minnesota so that they're a resident of another state. and we lose all that tax revenue. So you can't overtax. Classic example, I read in the paper this morning that St. Louis County is going to have a 1.48% tax increase proposed for next year. Let's put it into perspective.
Not surprised.
Let's put it into perspective. We are in a period of time where we are telling people that they cannot work. So that they have lost their jobs because the government has told them that they cannot work. Now you want to tax those people more? You can't, I mean, it's unfathomable how anybody could even think about that. To increase taxes now is absolutely ludicrous.
You're going to have to. We've got a big deficit downstate, thank you, the governor of the state of Minnesota.
There's more than one ways to skin a cat.
Well, yeah, we're going to be the cat skin because we're going to get more tax increase. It's guaranteed. So what are some of the other issues that you feel are crucial besides the financial problems?
Today's world, absolutely, public safety, law and order is one of the prime subjects and one of the prime stances that I'll take. I'm very much in favor of public safety, law and order. And in today's world, we've got situations where we have closed parks to people that go there for religious freedom and make them go away, not use them, but we're allowing looters and arsonists to meet and stage their protests from there.
In the Twin Cities, my son keeps telling me about this, yes.
Yep, it's happening. So it's we live in a funny world. You cannot catch COVID from Target, Walmart, Home Depot. You can't catch it from liquor stores or abortion clinics, but you can catch it from small business and churches. So why is it that we have decided to approach it that way? It's just not, it's not right.
It's not American.
It's not American, absolutely.
It's also not constitutional, but then what's the Constitution when you've trashed it? And that's unfortunately
Well,
what's
unfortunately, in Minnesota, we've got a governor that's been a dictator for, 5 months, I believe it is, going on? And I'm not sure when this show airs, but Friday is where another vote comes up because they have to vote, I believe, every 30 days. And the Republican portion cannot get enough Democrats to move to their side to vote him out of his dictatorial position. But Minnesota has no representation at all right now. We have one person calling the shots. And I don't think the Minnesota Constitution nor the U.S. Constitution was developed in such a way that that would happen.
Minnesota Constitution is not, and so we'll leave that one for now. Okay, so jobs. We just lost a great big employer in the western side of the city, paper company. And I understand our port is no longer top-notch in the nation. We really don't have a lot of industry in this area. What's wrong with this problem? Where is the big problem with this current mayor is talking about, we need jobs and we need to increase the ability for people to get jobs. So they let something like Costco get special benefits. They weren't going to go into Hermantown, so they come over here to the city of Duluth, and now they're developing a piece of land up close to where my business is. And they're going to get tax breaks at the expense of the taxpayers. Why are we allowing that type of industry and jobs and businesses, and yet we are excluding the opportunity for that paper company to continue to thrive, and 600 jobs are lost from there, but not 1 ounce of help was given to that paper company? Well, what do you see as the biggest issue there?
I think the biggest issue is that companies that are in existence are oftentimes ignored. So should we have offered assistance to the paper company? I think we certainly should have been talking to them. It's a local issue, not a state issue, but it's still, they're part of the state. Duluth is still part of the state.
And it
So-
affects the economy
And it affects
of
the
this area.
economy here in Duluth. So I think that there's a lot of, a total lack of attention given to existing companies and the help that they might make. A lot of attention is given to bringing new companies in. And of course, there's a line that you can't cross. There's a line that is corporate welfare to a degree, which is a long-term benefit to a community, and you have to look at it as such. So I'm not saying that I'm opposed to Costco getting some tax benefits to attract them to come in here. That could be a good thing. It could be a long-range good thing to the community. But at the same time, you can't ignore another large business that's leaving the community that maybe could have used those tax breaks to stay in the community, keep the jobs that we have. So what we need to focus on in Duluth, and we need to focus on in the state of Minnesota, is to bring in good family supporting type jobs. We've done very well in this city for the last 20, 30 years to promote tourism. And
Yes.
we've got a lot to offer tourism. We've got 1,600 motel rooms that can attract people in, bring them in to spend their money in Duluth. And that money is obviously going to produce some tax revenue for the citizens of Duluth. So that is a good thing. But the jobs created through the hospitality industry are not really what we're looking at as family supporting jobs.
Right.
You might have a single mother who is home with the kids during the day now because of COVID that might be able to come and be on a cleaning crew, but they're paid minimum wage.
Right.
And those jobs are not designed to be family supporting type jobs. We need to promote industry. We need to get some more industry into Duluth, like a Cirrus Aircraft, which was a recipient, as you know, of some of the corporate welfare, if you want to title it that, to attract them into Duluth. But now we've got lots and lots of good, well-paying jobs. We had AAR, which the city worked feverishly to get Northwest Airlines in here with that huge building. And then they lost Northwest Airlines as a repair center, and hundreds of good family supporting jobs were lost when that closed. Well, then they got AAR to come back, and now with COVID, AAR has pulled out, so we need to attract somebody else. We need to get family supporting jobs back into the city, and there's opportunity if somebody's willing to put forth the effort. So,
If somebody is willing to put forth the effort. But you have to have somebody that's in charge that knows what they're doing too.
that helps.
Yes, so we need people like yourself with business experience. I mean, getting out of college and getting a degree as an attorney and then running a city when you have no professional background whatsoever, and that's the way some of our legislators and our mayors and all this are, they don't have a clue how to run a business, which I think is extremely important.
Yes.
Because you bring that knowledge with you in making decisions on how other people's money is spent.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Anybody that hasn't signed the front of a paycheck doesn't really understand what it's like to meet a payroll. And to meet that, they have to have the income from the business coming in. So I'm not saying that that's an eliminator, but it certainly does help. It certainly does help. Give the perspective of what it's like to have and run a successful business. It takes work.
Yes, I'm very well aware of that
Yes,
as a business owner.
yes.
So, okay, so we've discussed financial. What other key issues, if you don't come up with one, I have one on the tip of my tongue, so it's up to you to choose the next one.
I'll throw mine out. Hold it on the tip of your tongue. I'm very much in support of the mining as an industry. Mining as an industry is key to the city of Duluth, the port of Duluth, and as you indicated earlier, our port is not doing as well as perhaps it could. And a lot of, I mean, so the way that the mining industry goes dictates how Duluth is going to survive.
Exactly.
When I came to Duluth, mining industry was just, it was thriving with the taconite revision and comeback of the taconite industry, and the range was doing quite well. Port of Duluth is doing quite well. Duluth posted its last 100,000 plus occupants, and a lot of that is due to the success of the Iron Range. And of course, we had a Republican mayor at the time, Ben Boo. Now, since then, and for the last 3 or 4 decades, the city of Duluth, industry-wise, has done very little in terms of coming back and replacing some of those, again, family-supporting jobs. Mining is key to the success of Duluth, and people should understand and realize how important that is. Can you mine successfully, and can you mine with environmentally favorable conditions? Absolutely. There's so many things that are going on up on the Iron Range that are distorted from other sides of the table, if you will. I've seen pictures of the mine from Brazil that was compared to this future polymet mine that they're saying that the water's broke. It's not at all the same thing. So they distort. They take pictures from other places. The purpose of the boundary waters was to keep a pristine area so that we could mine the rest of Duluth. I'm sorry, the rest of Minnesota, the northern Minnesota. And that is key. We need mining, and we can do it environmentally safe. So that's the other thing that I want to make sure that the viewers understand from my position. I fully support mining. I fully support it that it's environmentally safe, and it can be. Classic example. For the last 60 years, the city of Virginia has been getting its water supply out of an abandoned mine, the old Mesaba Pit mine. That's where they get their water supply. It filled up with water, and they get clean water out of there. And it's probably, I think, better, I've heard, than some of the water that we're drinking in other cities in the area. So you can mine safely, and you can mine environmentally friendly. So.
And you can log friendly as well. That's
Absolutely.
another thing that has been basically shut down on the Iron Range.
Yes.
I know a logger. I know of loggers because I hear a particular radio show that these loggers are struggling. And so that's another issue that helps the economy of the area, and that filters right down here into Duluth as well. So what is your thoughts on that?
I'll toss a real good thought out. This is September 10th that we're doing the show. How do you think the people of California feel about forest management right now?
Yeah. Well,
So, the
Yeah.
city of San Francisco is red and covered with smoke, and people are dying out there by the dozens. And I wonder if they could turn the clock back 10 years, if they would consider forest management. So, forest management is nothing more than keeping an environmentally friendly, wildlife friendly environment of your forests. If you let them go, they're going to be old growth, and eventually they're going to fall over and they're going to burn up. And if you don't allow the fires to continue, then you're not going to get rebirth and regrowth of those forests. So I support forest management, put it that way.
my husband just came back from the Boundary Waters, no fish again. But he was in an area, he was actually on a peninsula of that area where the blowdown was many years ago. And they're still able to find firewood from the blowdown. And fortunately, they were on a peninsula because there were canoeists that were filling up their canoes. If they were on an island, they were filling up their canoes going to a peninsula or mainland to find the blowdown stuff. So it's still a potential problem up there. And now that we've had this spruce bud worm destroying all of the balsam, you've got even more of a potential. If a fire started up there, there's still a lot of kindling that could just burn up all the new growth and everything else in its path. So that was a very unwise choice not to get in there and get rid of that blowdown, but there was
They did do a lot. They did some controlled burns.
some, but
Yeah.
there's still a
There's
lot
still
of
a lot.
area that was
Okay.
not,
Yeah, as a pilot, I remember watching several of the controlled burns from the air as they were going on and watching them. It's kind of unique. They would take a bucket full of hot coals, take them out to an area and drop them, and start controlled burns. And of course, they let the pilots know what they're going to do ahead of time so that they can avoid the area. But a couple times I happened to be in the area, going someplace else, and didn't notice it. So.
well, one of the things they didn't do is let it be logged off by the loggers. The loggers could have benefited from that. So their mismanagement, we've had some mismanagement here in Minnesota, but we don't have a whole lot of time left. So
Okay.
is there another issue that
Well,
you feel that should have some strong attention based on what's going on?
I think we've covered quite a few. I get back to the question that you had at the tip of your tongue, but just, I would, if I'm going to summarize, I'm going to say, we've got to fight tax increases in Minnesota,
How about
and
it?
including estate taxation, because again, people that have businesses that are successful are leaving if they have money, they're leaving the area because they don't want to pay that high Minnesota inheritance tax. So that.
How about education?
Uh,
What's your thoughts on the way education has gone over the last several years?
If I were to sum up how education's gone in the last several years, I would say that we've thrown a tremendous amount of money at it, but we haven't gotten the benefits back. So our education standards have not risen with the amount of money that's thrown at it. This is way, way off, but to answer your question, Abe Lincoln studied in front of a fireplace.
Right.
And he did not have a computer or anything else, but he studied in front of a fireplace, and he happened to be a very, very intelligent person. And he studied by himself, self-taught at home. So just throwing money at a problem doesn't necessarily solve the problem.
I monitored the 709 school district for 10 and a half years with one of those cameras.
Okay.
I know. I was there when Art Johnston and Gary Glass were on the school board fighting the $500 million red plan that majorly affected my business. I know what's coming out of the public indoctrination system, and
Sure.
it is not what it was when I went to school, where kids could be functional. I've talked to business owners that can't even read and write properly.
Yep.
We have a graduation gap from one end of the city to the other that is so big, and we're the worst in the state of Minnesota.
Yep.
So yes, throwing money isn't the answer. What is the answer is people like yourself get elected that will get down there and start looking at what the Minnesota Department of Education has been doing and not doing on behalf of our students. And I see a big exiting of the public indoctrination system now that parents have seen over the last several months of last year, school year, what their kids really were not getting in school.
When I was running my karate program up at UMD, I had a requirement that they had to write a theme for their black belt test. And I was amazed and astounded that college age people, college juniors and seniors that were writing these themes were basically illiterate. They would, a little E or a little I when they're saying I, and just didn't know how to structure a sentence. They were basically and functionally illiterate. So once they were away from the computer that corrected everything for them, they could not write a theme. College graduate type people. So they're getting out of high school, they're getting out of grade school, getting out of high school, and now getting out of college with being functionally illiterate. That's the only definition I could really apply to it. Functionally illiterate. So education, you can't just throw money at education. You have to devise ways to improve education. And again, I'm a new candidate. I've got a lot to learn, and a lot of areas that I'm going to need to study, and a lot of areas that I think that we can improve in this state. And at the stage that I'm at, I'm just saying that I'm willing to take on the challenge. I'm willing to study whatever I need to study in terms of how to truly improve Minnesota, and Duluth especially.
Well, I think that's a noble goal. And now the issue is you, the viewers. Are you going to sit home and ignore the fact that candidates are out there trying to make things better for you? Or are you going to get out there and cast a vote? You have options, and you really need to look at what you've done in the past is probably not the right path. At least you have some choices, and you need to contact candidates that are running for office. You need to talk to them, and you need to go and do your part by voting. We live in a country where we still have that right to vote, although I think the votes are going to be skewered more with some of the tactics being used. However, you have a responsibility, and you can't sit home and say, well, I'm never successful with anybody I voted for. I've heard that many times. You have to go and do your part. You have that right up to this point. So November 3rd, Election Day, get out and vote. And if you can't be there on November 3rd, then do a one-time absentee ballot voting. You get that from your county, or you can get it from the city. Go out and vote on November 3rd. It's your responsibility. Thanks, Tom, for running.
You bet.
And I wish you the best.
Thank you, Marcy. Thanks for having me on your show.
Good to have you here.